Years after graduation, the legendary school beauty I'd secretly adored. Back in high school had become a high-powered corporate heiress. When we finally reunited at a class gala, she pierced me with a frigid, indifferent stare and demanded, "I'm sorry, do I even know you like?" But then the explosive news of me going public with a sensational young starlet instantly went viral that same night. Reports of her sudden suicide attempt rocketed to the top of the trending searches. And 3 days later, the reveal of her private belongings on the news sent shockwaves across the entire internet. Hidden among her personal items, everything was obsessively filled with photos of me and stacks of heartfelt love letters she'd written to me in secret. Yet I chose to tell our former classmates a very different story from our high school glory days. I was convinced Sheng Wanming absolutely loathed the very sight of me. When my dating scandals leaked, she deliberately informed my girlfriend that I was biologically impotent. And when she started dating the school's ultimate heartthrob, I retaliated by spreading nasty rumors everywhere that her private life was a chaotic, toxic mess. That was until that horrific car accident changed everything. Sheng Wanming suffered a brutal spinal injury and the surgeons declared she might be paralyzed and never walk again. That so-called heartthrob never even bothered to set foot in her hospital ward. He simply sent a cold, heartless breakup text before vanishing off the face of the earth. The prestigious eldest daughter of the Sheng family, once worshipped and spoiled by the elites, was plunged into the darkest depths of the abyss overnight. She spiraled into a vortex of rage and crippling depression, even trying to end it all. Her parents were drowning in tears, completely powerless to save her. When she finally snapped and used a heavy chair to bash her own useless legs, I didn't think twice before lunging forward to shield her, absorbing that bone-shattering blow with my own body. So her eyes brimmed with tears as she shrieked, "My legs are already useless. It doesn't matter if they're pulverized. Mo, do you have a death wish or something? Can't you see what's actually at stake here?" I was in such excruciating agony that I was drenched in a cold sweat. But I stubbornly pulled her legs close and whispered, "I see it perfectly. It's because your legs are the most important thing to me. That's exactly why I had to intervene. Because I know with absolute certainty that one day I will be the one to help you stand tall again." In that instant, the usually haughty and untouchable Sheng Wanming trembled violently within my embrace. Her voice fractured and desperate. "Lucian, please don't abandon me, Mo." By the time the day arrived where she could finally walk unaided home, her loyal circle of socialite friends dragged her to a private VIP lounge specifically to throw a massive victory party, clutching a pair of exquisite high heels I'd carefully chosen. As a surprise, I was just about to enter when I overheard the scandalous chatter echoing between Sheng Wanming and her inner circle. "So, Wanming, when's the wedding with Lucian? I mean, you were paralyzed for 3 straight years. If he hadn't been your devoted shadow Wal, you'd have checked out of this life a long time ago." After a heavy, suffocating silence, Sheng Wanming's voice sliced through the air with icy indifference. "I've only ever viewed him as an older brother." "A brother?" Her friends' voices spiked in disbelief. "Wanming, don't tell me you're still pining for that loser Huo Tingchuan Tiod. The second you had that horrific accident, he didn't even bother to check if you were alive, before ghosting you and running as fast as he could. Now that he sees you're back on your feet, he crawls back. You can fall for anyone, but don't you dare go back to him." Yo, with the situation laid bare like this, how could I possibly misunderstand her true intentions? Now that she has achieved a total recovery and the convenient older brother placeholder me is officially no longer required to stay on stage. I swung the door open and stepped into the light. The rowdy laughter in the suite vanished instantly. "Lucian, how long have you been standing there?" someone asked with a shaky voice. "I literally just got here." I forced a polite smile and acted as if I hadn't heard a single word of their betrayal, extending the gift toward Sheng Wanming. "Cheers to your remarkable recovery." Just as Wanming's fingers brushed the box, the heavy door was shoved open once more. Huo Tingchuan stood in the doorway, his eyes bloodshot and watery. "Wanming, I heard the news that you're better. I had to come here and see it for myself." The room's temperature plummeted to sub-zero. "What do you think you're doing here, dead?" The faces of Sheng Wanming's friends twisted in pure disgust. "When Wanming was broken and bleeding after the crash, you were the first coward to tuck tail and run? How do you even have the audacity to show your face here?" Huo Tingchuan's face turned a deep crimson under the verbal lashing. He shoved the gift toward Sheng Wanming and turned to bolt. But Sheng Wanming suddenly clamped her hand around his wrist. "You're already here. You might as well stay." Every single person in the room was paralyzed, their eyes darting to me simultaneously. I stood my ground, the polite smile on my face never once faltering. The vibe for the rest of the party was thick with suffocating tension. Sheng Wanming's circle of socialite friends deliberately froze out Huo Tingchuan while relentlessly teasing me and Sheng Wanming. "Hey Lucian, is it true you've been giving Wanming leg massages?" Literally every single day. Whoa. Obviously, he does the guy's basically a professional therapist now. Besides, Wan Ming only tolerates his touch. She loses her mind if anyone else tries to handle her. I kept my head down, feigning ignorance of Huo Tingchuan's murderous glare. As for Sheng Wanming, even though she remained deathly silent, I could practically feel that every fiber of her being was hyper-focused on Huo Tingchuan. Just then, my phone vibrated with an unexpected call. The 3 words Mrs. Lee flashing on the screen made my eyes sting. I slipped out of the room to take it. From the other end of the line, Mrs. Lee's refined, icy voice resonated. Lu Zian, you must realize Wan Ming is now the reigning CEO of a powerhouse-listed corporation. She simply cannot be seen with someone of zero status. Your humble background offers her nothing. Look, I'd truly appreciate you playing the loyal caretaker over these last 3 years. Well, but you need to grasp the reality that if the Sheng family hadn't bankrolled your life back then, so you wouldn't have even set foot on a college campus. Let's just call this massive debt. Settled, shall we? The line went dead silent for a beat, as if she was waiting for me to spiral into a manic rage, or beg for mercy like a pathetic dog. Understood, I heard. My own voice respond, sounding hauntingly composed. I'll disappear from her life, and I promise I will never cross her path ever again. I ended the call and drove straight to the emergency room. The gash on my forehead was deep enough to require 3 stitches. The doctor gave me the standard warning to keep it dry. After the procedure was done and I stepped out into the night air, I spotted Sheng Wanming's signature Maybach parked just a few yards from the hospital entrance. The window was slightly down. Agape. Huo Tingchuan was sobbing as he whimpered, Wanming, I don't have the right to beg for your forgiveness, but I had no choice but to leave you behind. My parents were dead set against our relationship and literally forced me into exile abroad. They even confiscated my phone to cut me off. It's not that I didn't want to search for you. Sheng Wanming sat in the heavy silence. Then why reappear now of all times? Huo Tingchuan hung his head low, because forgetting you was impossible. I realize Lu Zian is in the picture now, and I'm not asking for the world what. I just pray you won't banish me from your life. Just let me stay in your orbit, even from a distance. Set. I stood anchored in the shadows watching Sheng Wanming remain mute for an agonizing eternity before she finally reached out to brush away Huo Tingchuan's tears. I don't hold a grudge, she whispered. As for Lu Zian, Kia, I've never seen him as anything more than a brother. It's not the romantic setup you're imagining. Huo Tingchuan's eyes sparked with hope. Is that the truth, Dad? Sheng Wanming gave a slow, deliberate nod. Huo Tingchuan was hit by a wave of euphoria, weeping as he pulled her into a desperate embrace. I let out a bitter, self-deprecating chuckle, turned on my heel, and marched straight to the immigration office. At the immigration checkpoint bureau, the clerk handed me the paperwork. Your visa will be processed and ready in a fortnight. Once the documents were filed, I retreated to Sheng Wanming's luxury villa while clearing out my things. I unearthed a forgotten photo buried deep in a drawer. It was a snapshot captured on the very day Sheng Wanming finally completed her grueling rehab. It was a rare shot where she beamed brilliantly at the lens kit while I stood faithfully by her side. Grinning so intensely, my eyes narrowed into crescent moons. I fixated on the photo for what felt like hours, before finally softly dropping it into the garbage. Some dreams, well, it's high time to wake up. At the crack of dawn the next day, an unexpected call from Sheng Wanming vibrated through. I left my stomach meds at home. Can you drop them off at the office for me, Mo? Her voice had that signature husky morning rasp. Her stunning presence. Tone was disturbingly casual, as if last night never happened. I lapsed into a cold silence for 2 seconds. When I reached the corporate headquarters, the elevator doors slid open just as I caught Huo Tingchuan carrying an elegant lunchbox out. What a massive coincidence. Huo Tingchuan offered a warm, radiant smile. I just dropped off some lunch for Wanming. Care to join us? I remained stone-faced and followed him silently into the office. Sheng Wanming was buried in corporate documents. Seeing the two of us enter as a pair, her eyebrows arched in subtle surprise. How did you two end up together? Just a random encounter on the way up. Huo Tingchuan smirked and unsealed the lunchbox. A spicy, pungent aroma instantly flooded the entire room. I grabbed that spicy stir-fry you're obsessed with. My face instantly dropped. She isn't supposed to eat spicy food. Shengyo. Wanming shot me a brief glance, then reached for her chopsticks. Indulging once in a while is harmless. She lifted a prime slice of beef drenched in fiery red chili oil and composedly took a bite. It didn't take long before Sheng Wanming's forehead was glistening with a fine layer of sweat. The fingers gripping her fountain pen began to quiver. Wanming, Tan said. Are you feeling all right? Huo Tingchuan asked, sounding concerned. I'm perfectly fine. Sheng Wanming forced a tight smile. I still have a mountain of work to finish. You two should head out first. I gave her a long, piercing look. Placed the stomach medicine quietly on her desk. then turned on my heel and departed. Once we were downstairs, I couldn't stop myself from saying, "Her chronic stomach condition is actually quite severe. Sad. Next time you bring her a meal, you need to be more careful." Huo Tingchuan suddenly erupted into a mocking laugh. "Lu Ziyan, have you still not figured out your place in her life? The only reason you have to obsess over those details, Bialis, is because to a woman like Wan Ming, you are nothing more than a slightly elevated caregiver. But I'm in a different league. She's in love with me, Ma, so I don't have to bother with any of that nonsense." He closed the distance between us, leaning in. Even if I handed her a cup of pure poison chill, she would obediently swallow every last drop. Get it? I knew deep down that Huo Tingchuan wasn't lying. When Sheng Wanming finally returned home that night, her complexion was a haunting, ghostly pale. I was busy pouring water in the kitchen. At the sound of her entry, I turned around. The glass in my hand nearly shattered on the floor. "Did you even bother to take the medicine?" I asked softly. The agony was so intense that I had to rush to the ER for an emergency stomach pump. Sheng Wanming collapsed onto the sofa, drained and weak the hair. Clinging to her forehead, drenched in cold sweat, I brought over a glass of warm water, knelt at her side, and began to massage her aching stomach. Sheng Wanming drained the glass, and responding to my tender rhythmic soothing, she drowsily leaned her weight against my shoulder to drift off. It was a scene identical to 1,000 times before, but this time I'm no longer gazed with pathetic infatuation at her sleeping face. I gently reclined her onto the cushions, tucked the blanket in tight, and headed straight upstairs without a single backward glance. The following day, Sheng Wanming dragged me along to Huo Tingchuan's solo art exhibition. By the end of the night, she had purchased every single one of his paintings. Huo Tingchuan shot me a look of pure, unadulterated smugness. Despite my long absence from her life, I am still the only soul who truly occupies her heart. He dropped his voice to a whisper, his lips dangerously close to my ear. "If you haven't swallowed that bitter pill of reality yet, I don't mind painting an even clearer picture for you." But before he could finish his taunt, the fire alarm erupted with an ear-piercing, screeching blare. "Fire, clear the building, everyone out high." The crowd instantly descended into a frantic panic. I was shoved down by the tidal wave of people. My ankle snapped with a sharp twist, the pain making my vision flicker into darkness. Then I spotted Sheng Wanming battling Hua against the human surge, desperately charging back inside. "Huo Tingchuan, where have you gone?" in her frantic voice was a raw primal terror I had never heard her express for anyone. A heartbeat later, she located a trembling, terrified Huo Tingchuan, seized his hand in a death grip, spun around, and bolted for the exit. I struggled desperately to haul myself up, when suddenly a deafening, thunderous crash echoed through the hall as a burning crossbeam came hurtling down. When I finally regained consciousness, the world was a blur of blinding, sterile, clinical white. Sheng Wanming's eyes flickered with a faint trace of uncomfortable guilt. The chaos was overwhelming. "I simply didn't see you there." "It's perfectly fine," I calmly cut her off, reaching for the water glass on the bedside table. "I'll stay and look after you for the next few days, Wajia," Sheng Wanming suddenly offered. "There's no need," I replied, shaking my head. "Your schedule is packed, so don't waste your energy worrying about me." Sheng Wanming opened her mouth to argue when her phone suddenly shrieked, "Wanming, help me, Wo! My hand is throbbing with pain. The doctor warns the wound could be severely infected." Sheng Wanming's resolute expression instantly wavered with hesitation. I watched her carefully, the corner of my mouth curling into a bitter smirk. "Go to him." Sheng Wanming gripped her phone tight, knit her brows, and sighed. "I'm honestly terrible at nursing others. I'll hire a private nurse to tend to you." I simply nodded. "Fine. Once." Sheng Wanming had hurriedly vanished. The hospital ward was finally reclaimed by silence. I stared blankly at the ceiling and let out a sudden hollow laugh. On the day of my release, Sheng Wanming actually arrived to pick me up in person. "There's a high-stakes auction tonight. I want you there." She held out a brand new designer wool coat. I instinctively recoiled from it. Sheng Wanming, assuming I was still being petty, frowned slightly. "I swear I truly didn't spot you in the chaos. But the moment I realized you hadn't made it out to Ikshe, I immediately dispatched a team to find you." Opened my mouth to retort, but ultimately chose silence and accepted the coat. The moment I climbed into the car, it hit me that Huo Tingchuan was already occupying the seat. Sheng Wanming offered a casual offhand explanation. Tingchuan was interested in the event, so I let him join us. All throughout the drive, Huo Tingchuan chattered enthusiastically with Sheng Wanming, reminiscing about charming childhood memories and bragging about his lavish time studying abroad. Sheng Wanming was quiet, yet she engaged with his every word with effortless grace. I watched the city lights blurring past the window, as silent and invisible as an outsider. Once the auction began, any piece that Huo Tingchuan so much as glanced at twice, she would immediately bid on to give to him. This extravagant display of generosity instantly drew the eyes of every socialite in the room. I heard her boyfriend spent 3 years nursing her back to health. Truly a legendary devotion right amidst the hushed murmurs. And biting gossip, someone mistook Hua Tingchuan for me. Wait, that guy isn't the Mr. Lu we saw in the headlines. He's the one who ghosted CEO Sheng years ago. At those words, Sheng Wanming's entire body stiffened. Only then did a flicker of realization cross her face as she turned to me. Is there anything in particular you want? Yes. At that precise second, they were showcasing a breathtaking sapphire, glimmering under the spotlight's intense glow. Its luminescence was as enigmatic as the depths of the ocean. My gaze instinctively anchored itself for a fleeting second longer. Sheng Wanming immediately hoisted her paddle. 10 million. Hua Tingchuan suddenly chimed in. Legend says this is a sacred token of affection that a foreign princess bestowed upon her soulmate, symbolizing eternal fidelity, and a passion that never flickers out until the end. He locked eyes with me, his stare dripping with hidden malice. It suits Mr. Lu perfectly. Sheng Wanming's grip on the paddle tightened slightly. Then she handed the winning bid directly to Hua Tingchuan. Actually, I think this one compliments you better. This feels a bit inappropriate, doesn't it, you? Hua Tingchuan put on a show of hesitation. Wasn't this the piece Mr. Lu had his heart set on? Goi, perhaps I should select something else for him. Sheng Wanming's eyes drifted toward me. What else caught your eye? I cast my gaze downward, my lips twisting into a bitter, self-deprecating smirk. A gem representing loyalty was deemed unfit for me, yet it was gifted effortlessly to Hua Tingchuan. Don't bother, I murmured quietly. As the auction concluded, the elite guests scrambled to make their exits. Exploiting the moment she was swamped by high society sycophants, Hua Tingchuan seized the chance to corner me. Lu Ziyan, Yami Yawoko. The writing is finally on the wall for you, isn't it? Hua Tingchuan hissed in a low vibration, his thin lips curling into a triumphant sneer. I'm the only one Wanming truly desires. Your desperate clinging, like some pathetic parasite, is only making her despise you more. My eyes reflected nothing but a hollow, dead stillness. You're about to get exactly what you want. Wait, what's that supposed to mean? Ko. Hua Tingchuan's brow furrowed. I didn't give him the satisfaction of an answer, kill. Simply turning on my heel to depart. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air behind me. I whirled around just in time to see Hua Tingchuan spiraling down the grand staircase. Sheng Wanming charged toward the scene and shoved me with violent force. The impact was so savage that I careened backward into the wall. What kind of grudge are you nursing against Tingchuan? That would drive you to do something so monstrous. What does? Her stare was sharp enough to draw blood. Even if I failed to shield you during those few accidents, if you have a vendetta, then direct your rage at me. Why would you target him, my back? Slumping against the frigid wall, my voice was a mere whisper yet steady. I didn't touch him. Wanming, please. Hua Tingchuan feebly clutched Sheng Wanming's hand. It was just my own clumsiness. Mr. Lu is completely innocent. You don't have to keep playing the saint for him. Shunga. Wanming shot me a venomous glare before stooping down to hoist Hua Tingchuan directly. I've reached my limit with you. Find your own way home. I stood there paralyzed, staring at the receding figure of the treacherous Sheng Wanming as she cradled Hua Tingchuan and frantically departed. My fingers brushed the one-way flight ticket tucked in my coat pocket. The flight to London, departing in just 1 week, will finally strip away all this wasted love and agony. Very soon, the persistent nuisance, known as Lu Ziyan, will permanently evaporate from her reality. After getting the gnarly bruises treated at the hospital, the ones carved into me by Sheng Wanming, viciously slamming me into that wall, I trudged back toward the opulent mountain slope villa. The grueling trek took exactly 2 hours and 15 minutes. The sky began to weep a freezing drizzle, the early winter wind slicing like jagged ice blades underneath my thin, useless collar, piercing straight into my bones. I didn't reach for an umbrella or hail a ride. In that desolate moment, I was beyond the sensation of cold. When the heart is completely deadened, the physical senses become hauntingly numb. Right there on the hidden backstage stairs of the auction house, Hua Tingchuan had deliberately backed up and tumbled, yet notorious Sheng Wanming transformed into a feral lioness charging toward me, violently hurling me against the jagged icy wall. Hua Tingchuan, Suduk. What could he have possibly done to deserve that from you? Even if I failed to shield you in those past incidents in death. If you're holding a grudge, then target me directly. Why would you hurt him? I'm finished with you. Get yourself home, Hill. Her bone-chilling, icy declaration, paired with the image of her sheltering Hua Tingchuan as she fled the scene, played on a relentless, agonizing loop. Inside my mind, every single repetition felt like treading on a vertical bar. Brutal blow to my already shattered, bullet-riddled heart. But after being ruthlessly trampled, time and time again, I suddenly realized the agony had faded. Resembling a vertical bar. Patient who has endured excruciating trauma for too long, instantaneously has so. One day, my pain receptors just completely snapped. In its stead remained a soul-crushing silence that I had never encountered until now. I lightly grazed the flight confirmation for. With the London tickets in my possession, there were merely 7 days remaining before departure, when I shoved open the massive front door of the villa. The living room was shrouded in oppressive darkness. Back then, during these hours, regardless of the time, Sheng Wanming stayed out for corporate meetings. I would invariably keep a comforting amber lamp glowing in the living room, while meticulously readying a thermos overflowing with stomach-soothing soup kept at the perfect temperature. Because her health was in shambles. For 3 years following the car accident, her mood was volatile and she frequently went on hunger strikes, causing severe damage to her delicate stomach lining to nurse her back to health. Someone like me, who had never even touched a stove like that, was forced to clench my jaw and grind for albeit high-level nutritionist certification. She couldn't stand the bitter bite of medicinal herbs, so I experimented with every possible way to add mild ingredients to mask the flavor. In the dead of night, when her stomach cramped and she thrashed in bed, I would rub my palms together and massage her abdomen through the entire night until the first light of dawn. I stood at the threshold staring at the dark, empty void and smirked with bitter self-deprecation. Without flicking the switch, I fumbled to change my shoes, walked straight past the cold thermos in the kitchen, and retreated into the guest bedroom on the second floor. Since I have firmly resolved to completely vanish from her existence, then this kind of a self-sacrificing martyr act should also come to an end. Early the next morning, I was jolted awake by the ear-piercing blare of a car horn downstairs. I approached the window and yanked the curtains back, witnessing a vertical bar. Flashy red Ferrari parked arrogantly in the yard. The door swung open, and Sheng Wanming stepped out draped in a sharp high-end power suit. The figure emerging from the passenger seat was none other than Hua Tingchuan, clutching a massive bouquet of Ecuadorian roses. The pair strode into the living room, sharing playful banter. Hua Tingchuan must have whispered something clever, because across the face of Sheng Wanming, usually an impenetrable fortress of ice, bloomed a smile I hadn't witnessed in 3 long years. Yes, sir. The soft, bashful radiance of a woman deeply in love. I stood motionless in the shadows of the second floor, observing the spectacle without a single tremor of emotion in my soul. I turned away and retreated into the bathroom, staring at the ghost in the mirror with hollow dark circles and a rough, neglected chin. Cranking the tap, I aggressively splashed icy water onto my face. Once composed, I descended the stairs. Sheng Wanming was perched on the sofa, buried in files, while Hua Tingchuan, masquerading as the master of the house, loitered in the kitchen, barking breakfast orders at the maid. Catching the sound of my footsteps, Sheng Wanming glanced up. When her gaze collided with the ugly bruise on my forehead from yesterday's violent collision, she visibly stiffened for a heartbeat. In that fleeting second, I thought I caught a flicker of genuine shocks, but it was instantly masked by her trademark arrogance. Why was the house pitch black when we got back last night? Her voice dripped with cold entitlement, laced with an interrogative edge, and the thermos is bone dry as well. Tingchuan was badly shaken yesterday and lost his appetite. I intended to serve him some of the soup you usually brew. I navigated over to the dining table, yanked out a chair, and took a seat, nonchalantly reaching for a slice of whole wheat bread. Too exhausted. It slipped my mind, I replied with flat indifference. The hand Sheng Wanming used to leaf through her documents suddenly froze and her brow furrowed into a tight knot. In her world, Luzian would never dream of using such a dismissive, lukewarm tone when addressing her. Before, if she displayed even a shred of irritation, I would instantly grovel for forgiveness and rush to the kitchen to start a fresh pot. Luzian, are you seriously trying to play mind games with me? Why? Sheng Wanming slammed her files shut, her tone turning glacial. Regarding that incident on the stairs, Tingchuan has already cleared the air for you. He admitted he might have simply lost his balance. I'm letting it slide, since he's not pressing the issue. Why exactly are you wearing that sour expression? I took a slow bite of the dry bread. It was parched, and swallowing felt like jagged glass against my burning throat. Hua Tingchuan isn't pressing charges after all. What an absolutely pathetic joke. He orchestrated that tumble down the stairs himself. Yet, in front of Sheng Wanming, he plays the role of the magnanimous victim to perfection. And the kicker, Sheng Wanming actually buys into his blatant lies. I'm not throwing a fit. I looked up, meeting her gaze with flat calm. CEO Sheng, I'm just genuinely exhausted. CEO Sheng? Sheng Wanming suddenly lurched, up a spark of inexplicable fury igniting in her eyes. She scrutinized me with an intense stare, desperately searching for a single crack in my composure, hoping to see me spiraling into a jealous frenzy. But she found nothing. Absolutely nothing remained in my hollow eyes. Fine, suit yourself. She frustratedly slammed her documents onto the coffee table with a thud. In just a few days, the lease on Hua Tingchuan's current apartment will officially expire, since his new place is still a construction zone of Hoi. He'll be moving in here for the time being. She hesitated for a beat, her eyes flickering back to me. Go clear out. The second floor guest room specifically for Huos. Ting Chuan, you'll be relocating to the guest room on the first floor. It's not like you have much baggage to move anyway. From the kitchen, Huo Ting Chuan, who was currently busy pouring milk, tilted his head and flashed a provocative, triumphant winner's smirk directly at me. If this were a month ago hearing, this would have made my soul wither from the agony. That second floor guest room is situated directly adjacent to Sheng Wanming's master suite. For 3 years, to attend to her every midnight whim tech, I never left that room. That space is lined with non-slip mats that I painstakingly selected for her safety. The cabinets are still stocked with her emergency medical supplies. But now I simply wipe my fingers with a napkin. I'll have it cleared out once I'm done with breakfast. Sheng Wanming seemed completely blindsided by my sudden decisive compliance. Her lip trembled as if she were on the verge of speaking it. But in the end, she merely let out a frosty scoff, spun around and marched off to the office in her clicking heels. For the entirety of the following day, I remained in the second floor bedroom, methodically packing my life away. In reality, Sheng Wanming was spot on. My personal belongings were embarrassingly few. For 3 grueling years, the entire axis of my existence revolved solely around her. I hadn't even bothered to purchase a single decent outfit worth over 1,000 yuan. I snatched several large, heavy-duty black trash bags and launched my purging ritual. The very first thing I cast into the void were 3 massive volumes of rehabilitation journals. The pages were filled with meticulous, dense records of every shred of Sheng Wanming's recovery over the past 3 years. From the initial soul-crushing despair, when she lacked the strength to wiggle a single toe, to the sheer euphoria when she finally gripped the railing to haul herself into a standing position. Those weren't just clinical numbers recorded there. They were littered with cheers and smiley faces I had sketched and taped inside. Certain pages were even marred by dark bloodstains from when she bit my hand in a blind agony. Spraying across the paper, I flipped to a random entry which read, vertical bar. Today, Wanming conquered 2 steps all on her own. Despite the gut-wrenching sobs of pain that followed, I know my girl is finally breaking free of her cocoon. If it means she can regain her strength, I would trade my own life without a second thought, just to make it happen. Reading those words now, I felt a sudden violent surge of bitterness rising in my throat. It wasn't a spark of lingering love, but a wave of sheer pity for my former self, who was so subservient, crawling in the dirt and so pathetically delusional back then. I expressionlessly shredded the journals and hurled them into the black trash bag without a flicker of doubt. Next came a cheap battered lighter she had once carelessly tossed my way, simply because her fingers had grazed it. I had hoarded it in a drawer like some sacred relic. Then there was the time she shattered a vase during a post-rehab meltdown. I had secretly salvaged a jagged shard, only because it bore a faint smear of her blood. My heart had been so fragile, I couldn't bear to let go. Then the first and solitary time we ever shared a movie date, leaving behind 2 bleached, ghostly ticket stubs. 3 years, over 1,000 days and nights of total devotion, suffering, sacrifice, and unrequited love were ultimately only enough to fill 2 garbage bags. Twilight hauling my suitcase into the guest bedroom in the most secluded corner of the first floor. This space was originally designated for storage and junk, starved of sunlight all year round, with the stagnant scent of mildew hanging in the air. And yet I felt an eerie sense of peace, mostly because this room is the closest to the exit, and the furthest point from the master suite on the second floor. 8 p.m. Sheng Wanming escorted Huo Tingchuan home. The belongings of Huo Tingchuan amounted to just 2 designer suitcases. He arrogantly commanded the maid to lug his bags to the second floor guest suite, then pointedly sauntered to the threshold of my first floor room and poked his head in to gloat. Yikes, Luzian, this place is practically a closet. It's so damp. Can you even stomach living in a dump like this? Huo Tingchuan pinched his nose shut, performing a theatrical display of utter disgust. But then again, for a charity case who relied on the Sheng family's handouts just to graduate college, most back in your pathetic hometown seat, you probably never even dreamed of having a room this nice. So I was busy arranging a few old books on the shelf. Hearing his insults, I didn't even grant him a glance, just responded with a chillingly flat tone. If Mr. Huo is so deeply concerned about my well-being, why don't we just trade rooms? Wait. Huo Tingchuan's face contorted instantly. He let out a frosty scoff. Who the hell do you think you are to demand anything from me, Wise? Huo Tingchuan xie. What exactly are you doing, Zhao? Sheng Wanming's voice cut through the air from the staircase. She had slipped into elegant silk loungewear, swirling a glass of expensive red wine, staring down at us like a queen from her throne. Wanming, I was honestly just trying to check on Luzian, Huo. Ting Chuan instantly activated his victim persona date, rushing to the landing to grasp Sheng Wanming's hand. But he clearly hates my kindness acting so, bitter and incredibly toxic. Sheng Wanming's cold gaze bypassed Hua Ting Chuan and locked onto me. In the vast living room, only a single ceiling light flickered. In the gloom, I remained anchored in the shadows. She couldn't read the look in my eyes. Lu Zian, yo. Her voice carried that familiar weight of condescending charity and warning. Hua Ting Chuan is our guest. You really ought to show some basic hospitality. You've dedicated yourself to my recovery over these past years. Come next month, I'll authorize a substantial bonus as your compensation. Hospitality of a host and a compensation then. The absurdity was staggering. She had clearly forgotten that a mere fortnight ago in a drunken haze. She gripped my hand and whispered, Lu Ziyan, yeah. Without your presence, ma, this house wouldn't feel like a home. That a woman's honeyed words. It seems are even more worthless than a man's broken vows. My gratitude, CEO Sheng. I offered a shallow bow, my tone impeccably formal like a flawless subordinate. Sheng Wanming scowled. She loathed it when I addressed her as CEO Sheng. In the past, if I ever dared to use that title, she'd flare up, accusing me of being coldly distant. But today, she couldn't even find the energy to be offended. She simply fixed me with a piercing, unreadable look before retreating back toward the master suite. When dinner was served, the tension in the dining hall reached a suffocating peak. Ho Tingchuan had usurped my usual seat, stationed right at Sheng Wanming's side. Meanwhile, the maid relegated me to the far end of the sprawling table. The spread was overflowing, with every type of seafood that Huo Tingchuan craved. Sheng Wanming had always detested seafood, yet there she was patiently, donning plastic gloves to clumsily deshell a shrimp, placing it in Huo Tingchuan's bowl. Try this. It was flown in via air freight, just this morning. Her voice was uncharacteristically soft, saturated with a tenderness that suggested she was ill, desperately trying to compensate for lost years. Huo Tingchuan played the part of the humbled lover. As he ate, looking so theatrically moved, his eyes grew misty. Wanming, you're incredible. During my years overseas, I craved your cooking every single day. I kept my head down, silently sipping on bland watery porridge. My stomach was twisting in agonizing waves of discomfort, but I forced myself to endure it with a mask of indifference. Huot. Tingchuan clearly decided this flex wasn't humiliating enough, as he abruptly pivoted his head to lock eyes with me at the far end of the table. His lips twisted into a malicious predatory smirk. Lu Ziyan, I heard that when you were scraping by in the sticks, Ma, you could barely even afford a bowl of rice. Ace. This high-end seafood is a rare luxury for you, isn't it? Why aren't you digging in? As he spoke, he pointedly shoved a bowl of steaming tamrar, yum soup across the table toward me. Go on, have some soup to soothe that empty stomach. The dining table was exceptionally wide. His shoving motion was intentionally reckless. The tom yum soup was still bubbling hot from the kitchen. With a calculated, accidental slip of his wrist, the bowl suddenly tipped over. The scalding spicy orange liquid erupted violently across the table, and significantly more than half of the boiling soup drenched the back of his own hand. Huo Tingchuan instantly let out a gut-wrenching shriek, leaping to his feet while cradling his hand up, hissing in sheer performative agony. What on earth happened? Sheng Wanming slammed her chopsticks down her face, turning ghostly pale as she frantically lunged forward to seize Huo Tingchuan's injured hand on his originally porcelain skin. A massive patch turned raw and angry red in a heartbeat, with blisters already beginning to swell. The pain is unbearable, Wanming. It burns. Huo Tingchuan's tears fell in heavy droplets. While sobbing, he used those shimmering teary eyes to glare at me with sheer unadulterated venom. Lu Ziyan, yeah. I know you despise me for moving in and taking your place, Wu. But if you're bitter, then just take it out on me, Wu. Why did you intentionally sabotage this bowl of soup the moment those words left his lips? The atmosphere in the dining room turned suffocating, say. Sheng Wanming whipped her head toward me. Her stunning eyes were now as sharp and cold as daggers. She glared at me, her chest heaving with violent tremors, as if she were judging a heinous criminal. Lu Ziyan, she thundered, her voice trembling with unbridled fury and soul-crushing disappointment. Have you completely lost your mind, Wu? No matter how much jealousy is eating you alive, you shouldn't sink to such pathetic, low-life tricks, Walshers. I remained seated at the end of the table now, my hands calmly crossed and resting on my lap. The hem of my white shirt was splattered with a few stray drops, looking a bit disheveled, but I didn't even flinch. I wasn't the man I used to be, where being utterly, falsely accused would make me tear up and beg for her to listen, even desperately demanding to check the surveillance, just to scavenge for my lost innocence. I simply sat there in haunting silence. Witnessing her face contorted with such raw fury felt like watching a mediocre low-budget comedy. That had absolutely nothing to do with me. I didn't do it. My voice remained eerily steady, my volume, not rising even a single decibel. You still have the nerve to deny it? Sheng Wanming was being driven to the brink of insanity by this newfound detached indifference of mine. She snatched an empty crystal glass from the table saw and shattered it violently at my feet. Shards of glass erupted in every direction. A jagged piece sliced across the back of my hand, leaving a thin oozing trail of crimson. But I didn't even blink. Who else could it possibly be at this entire table title? You're the only one harboring a pathetic grudge, Luzian Tiao. I used to think you were just a victim of a humble background with a narrow vertical bar perspective, but I never realized your soul was this toxic and malicious. Apologize to Huo Tingchuan. This instant, watching her completely unravel, I suddenly found this twisted three-person drama utterly exhausting. I had already made the choice to bow out and walk away. So why won't they just grant me my freedom? I slowly rose from my seat, ignoring the glinting glass shards beneath my shoes. Stalking step by step toward a cowering Huo Tingchuan, Huo Tingchuan saw me closing the distance and, by sheer reflex, recoiled behind Sheng Wanming's shadow. A flicker of genuine terror crossed his features, but then he remembered Sheng Wanming was his shield, so he bolstered his posture once more. I came to a halt, leaning down with predatory grace, to peer directly into Huo Tingchuan's deceitful eyes. Mr. Huo, my trembling voice, echoed with haunting clarity through the silent hall, carrying a frost that made the skin crawl. I'm so sorry. It was my unforgivable negligence that caused the soup to spill and scald your precious delicate hand. Oh, would you like me to grovel and apply the ointment for you? What? Those airy, nonchalant words struck like a sudden bolt of lightning, detonating within the confines of this opulent yet soul-crushing dining room. The smug triumph on Huo Tingchuan's face instantly petrified. He must have prepared a mental script full of manipulative victim lines to further antagonize me, but he was rendered speechless by my total abandonment of pride in that hollow apology. He instinctively shuddered and retreated, staring at me with eyes as if he were staring at a monster that had finally snapped. As for Sheng Wanming's explosive reaction, it was even more explosive than his. The motion of her hands suddenly went rigid. In that split second, I clearly witnessed her pupils constricting and trembling violently. She gazed at me, observing my submissive posture, staring into my eyes that were unnervingly calm, almost lifelessly still. The fury on her face was like a bloated balloon, punctured by a needle evaporating in an instant. In its wake was an indescribable, visceral surge of panic and sheer unease. This wasn't the Luzian she knew. In Sheng Wanming's subconscious mind, Luzian was a loyal hound who only knew how to wag his tail for her. No matter how much she lashed out or humiliated him, as long as she beckoned with her hand Luo, Xian would crawl back with teary eyes to lick her palm. He was supposed to be livid, supposed to feel victimized, supposed to be desperately pleading to prove his innocence. He shouldn't be acting like this, like a pool of stagnant water that no stone could ripple. Sheng Wanming's lips curled slightly, quivered as she lunged upright, because the movement was so aggressive. The sturdy solid wood dining chair behind her shrieked against the floor, unleashing an agonizingly piercing screech. Luzian, who exactly are you trying to mock with this pathetic performance? Okay, do you actually think that by acting like this, I'll believe you've been wronged? I won't. I stood tall and casually retrieved a wet wipe to dab the blood from the glass cut on my hand. If CEO Sheng feels that her rage hasn't been satiated yet, I can pack my bags and move out this instant. After all, even if that guest room is hidden away, it's still technically Sheng family territory. You wouldn't dare Kitua. Sheng Wanming nearly spat the words out by instinct, her voice so sharp and shrill that even she seemed startled by her own tone. She remained locked in a stare down with me, her chest heaving with violent tremors. A long silence followed it, and unable to mask the internal chaos ravaging her heart any longer, she dismissively waved her hand and pointed toward the hallway. Get back to your room. Don't you dare show your face to me for the next few days. Just looking at you is repulsive. Fine. Without a second thought, I pivoted and retreated to the gloomy guest room on the first floor, leaving all the chaos and the performative histrionics of Huo Tingchuan bolted outside the door. Leaning against the frame, I stared at my solitary 24-inch suitcase in the darkness and finally exhaled a heavy cleansing sigh of relief. Exactly 72 hours remain until my departure. Throughout the following 3 days, I successfully managed to vanish completely from her sight. Every single morning, I ghosted the house before they even stirred, heading to the library to scavenge for rental listings and academic paperwork for London. Only in the silent depths of the night, once I was certain they were dead to the world, did I tiptoe back to my hideout. Sheng Wanming seemed to be playing her own power game. She didn't ghost me a single WeChat message, nor did she bother with a phone call. In this massive villa, spanning hundreds of square meters, we silently acted the parts of two strangers with zero intersection. until the afternoon before my scheduled flight, when a single phone call demolished this fragile truce. At that moment, Sheng Wanming was escorting Huo Tingchuan to an elite downtown club to tailor outfits for tomorrow's birthday gala. I sat on the frigid floor of the guest room, cramming the final few textbooks into my luggage, when my phone suddenly buzzed with life. Across the screen flashed a familiar name, Mrs. Li, Sheng Wanming's frantic mother, the matriarch who once with a look of pure condescension flicked a bank card at me and promised that as long as I served Wanming well, the Sheng family would fund my education. I hit answer. Luzian Chai on the other end of the line, Mrs. Lee's voice was as poised and arrogant as always, dripping with an undeniable chill. Are you occupied? Chung. No, ma'am. Please speak. I wedged the phone against my ear, my hands never ceasing to organize my belongings. The situation with Wanming and Huo Tingchuan, I assume you're already well aware of the details. Wait, Mrs. Lee clearly felt no need to waste time on pleasantries, with me her voice carrying a faint, weary sigh. With a heavy dose of condescension, that boy Huo Tingchuan, despite his past transgressions, is vertical bar. Ultimately, the only one Wanming has ever truly loved. Now that he has returned, Wanming's entire world revolves around him. I didn't dare interrupt, silently enduring as she continued her ruthless judgment. I am genuinely grateful that you stayed and nursed Wanming for 3 long years. You're a decent man, but you must grasp the sheer prestige of the Sheng dynasty. Wanming is the powerhouse CEO of a global conglomerate. Her future husband absolutely cannot be a nobody with zero pedigree, who offers her no strategic advantage. Honestly, without the Sheng family's charity, you wouldn't have even set foot on a college campus, much less enjoyed this comfortable life. Those debts of gratitude will serve as your wages for these 3 years of nursing. Consider the slate wiped clean, shall we? The line went silent for a heavy moment, the atmosphere thick with a suffocating elitist pressure. In any other scenario, a low-born man who rose through sponsorship would be sobbing and groveling right now, or hysterically demanding why they were stabbing him in the back. Mrs. Lee had likely armed herself with a lethal arsenal of psychological tactics to dismantle any lingering persistence I might have, but I simply finished folding my final shirt, nestled it into the suitcase, and snapped the lid shut. The harsh rasp of the zipper echoed sharply through the hollow room. I heard my own voice reply, sounding eerily composed. Mrs. Lee on the other end of the line was visibly shaken. Even her steady breathing faltered for a split second. What was that fool? I said I agree, Mrs. Lee. I walked toward the window, gazing out at the dismal leaden sky. For 3 years, every penny the Sheng family invested in me has been meticulously logged as Phuc Wanming's live-in assistant and nutrition specialist. When calculated at current market rates, my labor is more than sufficient to repay that sponsorship. I am officially debt-free to the Sheng family. I'm leaving for good, and I will never cross her path ever again. Mrs. Lee seemed utterly paralyzed with disbelief. Her tone even carried a sharp edge of warning. Luzian, you're a clever man. You're well aware that if the Sheng family decided to banish you from City A permanently, it would be as effortless as crushing an ant. You'd best prove yourself to be a man of your word. Don't pocket our money and then desperately cling to Wanming. Rest easy, ma'am. I don't even want your money. I severed the call, tossed the device onto the mattress, and strode toward the desk. I retrieved a vertical bar, document I had drafted long ago, a formal waiver of all support and a total severance of ties. I signed Luzianto in the bottom right corner. The strokes were bold and final, devoid of any hesitation. I arranged this declaration away. The access card, the villa keys, and the limitless black card Mrs. Lee gifted me years ago, neatly atop the center of the living room coffee table. Having finalized my exit, I took one final sweeping look at the mansion I'd inhabited for 3 years. Every single shadowy corner here was once saturated with my naive fantasies. I used to slave away in that kitchen, suffering burns on my hands just to prepare her a perfect soothing broth. I used to cradle her on that sofa, staying vigilant through endless winter nights when she was doubled over with agonizing stomach cramps. I also used to sit at that sprawling dining table, poisoned by the delusion that one day I would share a meal with her, as her equal, as her husband. But now, this place is nothing but cold, dead ashes. I pushed the door open and stepped out. The biting early winter wind lashed at my face, yet it granted me an unprecedented surge of liberation. Countdown to 0. That night at the city's most opulent yacht club, the skyline was set ablaze. Sheng Wanming had reserved all 3 decks of the vessel to host a breathtakingly lavish birthday gala for Huo Tingchuan elite champagne premium roses and white daisies, alongside the most influential heirs of City A. We're all celebrating this newly crowned official boyfriend. Huo Tingchuan donned a bespoke suit, looking every bit like a noble prince, leisurely gliding through the high society crowd. As for Sheng Wanming, she reclined in the most secluded corner of a leather sofa clutching a glass of red wine, though her gaze seemed drifted and unfocused. Wanming, what's the matter? Not enjoying yourself? Hua Tingchuan sauntered over and possessively sat beside her, draping his arm around her shoulders. Today is my big day, Wuxi, and you are the guest of honor after all. Yeah. Sheng Wanming forced a tight, weary smile. It's nothing, I'm likely just exhausted. She looked down and instinctively checked her phone. The screen was desolate without a single notification. This was beyond abnormal, given Luzian's clingy nature, knowing she was hosting such a massive, lavish gala for Hua Tingchuan himself. He should have spiraled into a frenzy by now. He should have been trashing the house in a rage, spamming her with calls to interrogate her. He should have been flooding her with pathetic texts, pleading for her to return home early. But there was absolute silence. The entire day, Luzian was as quiet as a grave. For reasons she couldn't comprehend, a visceral surge of dread suddenly suffocated Sheng Wanming's heart. That sensation was like teetering on the edge of a bottomless chasm, Yamo. The ground beneath her crumbling into dust, while she desperately reached out, but found nothing to break her fall. Her stomach suddenly knotted in a sharp, agonizing cramp. Yuck. Cold sweat instantly drenching the fabric of her dress. Wanming, is your chronic pain flaring up again? Hua Tingchuan feigned worry with his usual crocodile tears. Should I fetch you a glass of warm water? Don't bother. Wanming violently shrugged off Hua Tingchuan's touch and bolted to her feet. I'm sick, I'm going home. But the party's just starting. How am I supposed to manage if you bail now? Hua Tingchuan whined, looking irritated. I said go entertain yourself. Are you deaf to all? Sheng Wanming suddenly exploded her shrill outburst, making Hua Tingchuan and the surrounding elite flinch. In pure shock, ignoring the stunned stares of the guests, she stormed off in her high heels and fled the yacht like she was escaping a nightmare. Slumping into the backseat of her car, she used her trembling fingers to tremblingly dial that phone number she once knew by heart. The subscriber you have dialed is currently unavailable. The robotic female operator's voice hit like a bucket of ice water, drenching her from head to toe in an icy soak. Step on it, drive faster, ta. Step on it, drive faster, shuo. She shrieked hysterically at the driver, her heart hammering as if it were about to explode from her chest. 15 minutes later, the sleek black car screeched to a halt in front of the villa. Sheng Wanming didn't even reach for an umbrella, charging headlong into the torrential downpour. She slammed the villa doors open with all her strength, bellowing that name, Luzian. Luzian, get out here this instant, Hui. There was zero response. The massive villa was swallowed by shadows. Unsettlingly silent, her fingers shook violently as she flicked the living room switch. The instant the crystalline chandelier blazed into life, she spotted the items meticulously arranged on the coffee table, the keycard keys, black card, and that thin sheet of paper declaring his total waiver of support. Sheng Wanming felt her breath completely vanish in that single second. Like a puppet with its strings severed, she dragged herself toward the coffee table, her gaze paralyzed by that white sheet of paper. Every single character on it ruthlessly hammered home one truth. The man she treated like a submissive hound, the one she believed would never abandon her, truly didn't need her in his life anymore. There's no way. That's absolutely impossible, Sheng Wanming spiraled into madness, sweeping every item off the table and onto the floor. Before bolting toward the guest room on the first floor, she kicked the door wide open. The interior was so sterile it looked like no one had ever stepped foot inside. The wardrobe was hollow, the bookshelf was bare, the toothbrush and towel on the sink had all vanished without a trace. She charged to the second floor, tearing through every corner, not even sparing the storage room. Nothing, not a single footprint, was left behind. He had departed with surgical precision, as if wielding a vertical bar, razor-sharp scalpel to surgically excise himself entirely from her existence, without spilling even a single drop of blood. Luzian. Sheng Wanming finally shattered and collapsed onto the frigid floor. The agonizing stomach cramps and the heart-wrenching trauma entwined as she buried her face and unleashed a desperate guttural howl like a wounded animal. The downpour outside the window intensified, as if trying to submerge the entire city in sorrow. And at this very moment, at a cruising altitude of 30,000 feet, I was reclined in a window seat on an international flight bound for London. The cabin was shrouded in a peaceful silence, broken only by the steady drone of the engines. I turned my head to gaze down at the sprawl beneath the clouds, now reduced to a flickering speck of light, gradually drowning in the abyss. Sir, here is your glass of warm water. The flight attendant's soothing voice broke my trance. Thank you. I accepted the glass and glanced down at the fading scar on my left wrist. From the night I shielded her from danger, and then quietly tugged my sleeve down to conceal it forever. Goodbye. Ming, may our paths never cross again. The speakers at Heathrow Airport were broadcasting in a crisp British accent to announce the safe arrival of my flight. I gripped my solitary 24-inch suitcase and vanished into the sea of people exiting the terminal. The London sky was weeping with a misty drizzle, charcoal grey and reeking of the damp iconic, biting chill of the River Thames. The biting wind pierced through my coat collar, yet I couldn't resist taking a deep, revitalizing breath. The air in this foreign land didn't reek of sterile disinfectants, didn't carry the bitter sting of herbal medicine, and definitely lacked that pathetic, suffocating weight of oppression. On this totally alien soil, I finally reclaimed my soul. The heart in my chest thrummed with a steady, powerful rhythm. It no longer spiraled just because of a single frown from Ming, nor did it shatter because of her blatant, cruel favoritism anymore. My initial days in London were anything but easy, despite having secured an admission offer and a full-ride scholarship from University Gzhou. Finance department, I still had to hustle for every penny. During the day, I acted like a sponge, soaking up cutting-edge financial theories. After lectures, I bolted straight to the professor's research lab, in the dead of night, I found myself scrubbing grease in a Chinese restaurant kitchen along the Thames or grinding out freelance code for other students. And it was grueling. Every night, I crawled back to my dorm, my joints, feeling as though they were splintering. Yet each time, I collapsed onto my cramped single bed and gazed at the neon white glow of the London eye through the glass. My soul was flooded with a profound newfound serenity. I no longer had to bolt upright in the middle of the night. I shoved, straining to catch the faint agonizing moans echoing from a master bedroom. I wasn't a spineless shadow anymore, perpetually on call to satisfy a master's every caprice. The gears of my destiny truly began to grind. On a late autumn afternoon 6 months later, that day I had just finalized a complex data model inference for my lead professor, clutching a heavy stack of research papers. I stepped out from the library. London's rain is notoriously unpredictable. Caught without an umbrella, I ducked into a secluded red brick alleyway, hoping to shave time off my trek to the subway station. Give it here now, mall. Help, is anyone there? A heated altercation, laced with profanity and desperate jagged sobbing, erupted from the corner ahead. I froze, my brow furrowing. Public safety in certain London sectors was sketchy at best. Street muggings like this were a common occurrence. Under normal circumstances, I'd mind my own business, but the girl's frantic pleas for mercy in Mandarin made it impossible for me to simply turn a blind eye. I jammed my documents into my waterproof pack and sprinted toward the noise. 3 intoxicated local hoodlums had pinned an Asian girl in a beige trench coat against the damp brick wall. She looked barely in her early 20s, with a black baseball cap pulled low over her eyes, shielding her face while white-knuckling a Leica camera that screamed luxury and expensive. A ruthless thug with sleeves of ink had seized the camera strap and was violently wrenching it from her grasp. The back of the girl's hand was raw and bloody from the friction, yet she bit her lip, refusing to yield. Let her go. I stepped into the fray, my voice dripping with ice. The trio of thugs spun around, their eyes brimming with sheer contempt. As they sized up my lean, Asian frame even let out a mocking provocative whistle. The lowlife clutching the camera swung his fist, launching a direct, heavy-handed punch at my face. During my 3-year stint as a caregiver for the Sheng family, to be capable of single-handedly hoisting Sheng Ming, who was paralyzed after AA, brutal car wreck, from her bed to her wheelchair, and to restrain her during her violent episodes of smashing everything in sight. I had secretly mastered Sanda and grappling over countless hours. I tilted my head to dodge the booze-reeking blow while simultaneously snaring his wrist, using his own momentum to twist him into submission. Then I drove a punishing knee strike deep into his solar plexus. The thug erupted in a vertical bar, pathetic shriek clutching his gut as he crumpled on the pavement. The other 2 witnessed this and cursed, charging me in a desperate double team. Run, refusing to be pinned down, I snatched the trembling hand of the girl who was still standing there, paralyzed, and sprinted like hell toward the bustling main thoroughfare. The downpour intensified, smearing my vision into a blur. We bolted like madmen through 3 blocks, skidding on slick cobblestones, until the muffled swearing behind us was swallowed whole by the roar of the city. When I spotted a cafe just ahead, with its inviting lights still glowing, the 2 of us looking like pathetic drowned rats, hurled open the door as the entrance bell chimed with a sharp ring. A surge of warmth laced with the intoxicating aroma of roasted coffee washed over our faces. We collapsed into the furthest booth, gasping for air in desperate ragged gulps. I snatched up a few napkins and wiped the rainwater from my face. Only then did I finally lock eyes with the girl across from me. She was completely drenched, her trench coat plastered tightly against her frame. The black baseball cap had been lost to the wind during our frantic escape, unveiling a pale and breathtakingly exquisite face. even though her hair was a tangled mess matted to her flushed cheeks, and the corners of her eyes were stained with tears that hadn't yet evaporated from the trauma sick. Nothing could overshadow her radiant beauty. She was staring back at me too. Suddenly, she broke into a soft giggle, her peach blossom eyes shimmering like a galaxy of stars. You know, the way you threw those hands and then hauled me away was literally like a main character falling from the sky in some K-drama. Her voice was melodious, carrying a vibrant spark of joy from our brush with death, and a completely unguarded innocence. I froze. Over the past 3 grueling years, I had heard nothing but venomous sarcasm and commands from Sheng Wanming. No one had ever gazed at me with such unfiltered admiration and gratitude before. Are you alright? Next time you're wandering alone through London, stay the hell out of deserted alleys, particularly when you're lugging around pricey gear like this, I flatly cautioned her. I get it, wah. I was just obsessed with finding a unique camera angle today. She playfully stuck out her tongue and then formally proffered her right hand toward me. Let's do a proper intro. I'm Sang Ning. Sang for Mulberry, Ning for tranquility. But seriously, thanks for saving my life today, hero, Sang Ning. The meteoric rising star currently dominating the domestic entertainment scene, hailed as the nation's first love. No wonder her face seemed so hauntingly familiar. I gave her hand a polite brief squeeze. Lu Ziyan. That afternoon, we lingered in the cafe for hours. Sang Ning possessed absolutely zero of the insufferable arrogance typical of a superstar. She was like a lively, chirping sparrow excitedly, recounting how she'd ditched her frantic agent to sneak away to London in search of artistic inspiration. I simply listened in quiet contemplation, occasionally humoring her, witnessing her vivid and luminous smiles. My heart, which had long since turned into cold dead ashes, felt as if a small stone had been tossed in it, stirring up subtle ripples. Before we parted ways, she adamantly insisted on getting my contact info tossed, declaring she absolutely had to treat me to a proper feast to repay me for saving her life. I dismissed it as mere social etiquette, but from that day forward, Song Ning became a relentless beam of sunshine, so boldly piercing through my dark damp reality, I would escort her to the most authentic hidden London flea markets, to scavenge for treasures. In return, whenever I was grinding through all-nighters for my Lotso thesis deadlines, she'd bring a homemade sandwich that looked like a total mess and wait downstairs at the library. She would stand in the gentle breeze along the Thames, lock eyes with me intensely, and say with total sincerity, Lu Ziyan, you are an incredibly amazing person, Shug, and you above everyone else deserve to be loved. Yeah. Piece by piece, she was reassembling the Lu Ziyan, who had been mercilessly trampled into the dirt by Sheng Wanming. Meanwhile, on the other side of the globe, Sheng Wanming's world was disintegrating in the most brutal, agonizing fashion. During that torrential downpour late that night, Sheng Wanming sat on the floor of the hollow guest room until daybreak, when the first dawn light pierced through the London-like fog and into the villa. She was burning up with a fever. President Sheng, what happened to you? The maid who arrived for the morning shift was paralyzed with horror to discover the vertical bar, usually invincible and untouchable CEO, in such a pathetic state. In this moment, she was shriveled in the corner of the living room, her dignity completely vanished. Her body was radiating heat, her fingers white-knuckling a dusty safety amulet, as she incessantly whimpered in her delirium, Lu Ziyan, don't leave me, I'm so cold. The maid, paralyzed with fear, frantically summoned an ambulance. Sheng Wanming drifted in a coma for 2 agonizing days. When she finally regained consciousness, pacing nervously around her bedside were Mr. Sheng Shou, Madame Leeds, and a bloodshot-eyed Huo Tingchuan, putting on a sickening performance of deep affection. But her hollow gaze only listlessly scanned the gathered crowd. She didn't see that one familiar figure. Wanming, ma, you're finally awake. That's all. Huo Tingchuan lunged forward, excitedly reaching for her hand. Do you have any idea how much you scared me, Miel? Why on earth did you run back all alone and sleep on the cold floor all night? Get out. Sheng Wanming's trembling voice was as jagged as sandpaper scraping across a table. She didn't even grant Huo Tingchuan a glance, recoiling her hand in pure disgust. Huo Tingchuan froze in his tracks, his face instantly contorting into an ugly mask of rage. I said, get the hell out. Are you deaf, y'all? Sheng Wanming suddenly bolted upright like an infuriated lioness, snatching a water glass and shattering it against the wall. Who gave you permission to be here? Get out. The hospital room instantly erupted into total chaos. Her mother desperately embraced her daughter. Wanming, have you lost your mind? Tingchuan has been a complete wreck for 2 days and nights just to watch over you. What was so special about that Lu Ziyan guy anyway, that you have to sabotage yourself into this pathetic state? Find him, Mom. Xiao, can you please just find him and drag him back to me? What? Sheng Wanming desperately gripped her mother's shirt, her tears finally bursting forth like a collapsed levee. The icy female CEO who usually breathed fire and looked down on everyone in the corporate world was now sobbing like a broken child who had just lost their entire universe. He didn't even leave a single note. He didn't take a single thing with him either. Is he that angry with me, why? Is it because I allowed Huo Tingchuan to move in that he ran away like this? What? Mom, please, you have to help me find him. As long as he's finally willing to return Kate, I'll agree to literally any condition, seeing the utterly shattered state of her daughter. Her mother sighed and looked over at, signaled to the assistant standing nearby. The aide edged forward with visible trepidation, proffering a slender report with a wavering voice. President Sheng, over the last 48 hours we've utilized every single resource to track down Mr. Lu Zian. He didn't just deactivate his local mobile number and scrub his entire social media presence. He also completely liquidated his bank accounts. On the precise night of Mr. Huo's birthday gala chuo, he boarded a one-way flight to London. Furthermore, the assistant gulped audibly. Refusing to meet Sheng Wanming's piercing gaze, we discovered that his visa application process began over 6 months ago. He's not only secured an offer from a top G5 university in the UK, but he's also pursuing permanent residency. Boom, it felt as if a tactical nuke had detonated inside Sheng Wanming's mind 6 months ago. Wasn't that exactly when she'd finally regained her mobility and personally proclaimed to every guest at the victory celebration that she merely viewed him as a brother, while shamelessly parading Huo Tingchuan by her side? It turns out that even back then, he was already meticulously plotting his escape. He had been like a cold, detached spectator watching her and Huo Tingchuan's little play, observing her as she repeatedly chose favoritism and tore into him. He didn't cause a scene or beg to stay. He simply deducted points in silence. Once the score hit 0, he, without a hint of hesitation or regret, expunged her entirely from his universe. The agony, like a rusted serrated blade carving into her soul, climaxed at this very moment. Absolutely no way. Yeah, I refuse to believe it. Sheng Wanming's face turned deathly pale. She savagely ripped the IV from her hand and stumbled, clambering to get out of the hospital bed. I have to fly to London. I have to find him. But the second her feet hit the floor, a localized stabbing migraine shot through her gut. She doubled over in agony, a cold sweat instantly drenching her as she crumpled back onto the mattress. It had been 3 years. For 3 long years, her stomach had been nurtured by Lu Zian until it became incredibly fragile. A single bite of something cold raw, or spicy, or even a massive emotional breakdown would trigger violent crippling spasms. In the past, at the slightest hint of a frown, Lu Zian would instantly appear with a cup of perfectly tempered honey water, using his gentle hands to soothe her pain away. But now in this moment, the room was filled only with the clinical stench of bleach and Huo Tingchuan's fraudulent concern. Huo Tingchuan hurriedly pressed a cup of steaming water toward Wanming. Wanming, take a sip of this. Splash, Sheng Wanming, without a flicker of mercy, slapped it aside, sending a jolt through. The cup in Huo Tingchuan's grip flying, the scalding liquid, drenched Huo Tingchuan from head to toe. This water is absolutely repulsive, Yuel. Are you seriously too incompetent to even check the damn temperature? The infamous Sheng Wanming shrieked hysterically right in Huo Tingchuan's face. Where is Lu Zian? I need Lu Zian to... no one else can replace him. Chill. Huo Tingchuan winced, his face twisting from the burns. And for a fleeting moment, a flash of venomous malice flickered deep within his eyes. Yet he swallowed his rage and played the victim. Wanming, face it, Lu Zian has abandoned you. He took your family's fortune and fled the country to live a life of luxury. Without a care, only I am still loyal to you. Shut your pathetic mouth. He didn't touch a single cent of the Sheng family's money. What right do you even have to utter his name? That was the first time and the most vicious instance, that Sheng Wanming ground Huo Tingchuan's ego into the dirt. Following her discharge from the hospital, Sheng Wanming didn't actually fly to London to hunt me down. It wasn't for lack of desire, but her insufferable pride was staging a final, desperate stand. She was still stubbornly clinging, convinced that since I was isolated and friendless in London, I wouldn't be able to survive the grind. She believed that by severing all my domestic ties and financial safety nets, I would eventually be forced to crawl back and beg for her forgiveness just to stay alive. Consequently, she buried herself in her work, using a soul-crushing schedule to numb her. As for Huo Tingchuan, he naturally encroached into the villa's guest quarters. Flexing his status as Sheng Wanming's fiancé, he began to peacock through City A's elite social circles. Without me there to act as his foil, Huo Tingchuan's hollow, empty vessel nature was rapidly and completely unmasked. He didn't just covertly exploit the Sheng Group's reputation to swindle investors at every turn, but also maintained 2 D-list rookie models on the side. He even slunk off to Macau's casinos behind Sheng Wanming's back and accumulated a staggering mountain of loan shark debt. Sheng Wanming, initially plagued by guilt over Huo Tingchuan, being forced into exile years ago, bailed him out and cleared his debts multiple times. But as Huo Tingchuan became increasingly bottomless and greedy, and as her own depression and chronic insomnia spiraled, her patience finally hit its breaking point. The villa had completely lost that pristine and tranquil aura it once possessed. Huo Tingchuan frequently stumbled in at midnight, reeking of cloying cheap perfume and stale booze, bellowing for the chauffeur or barking orders at the terrified domestic staff. On one occasion, Sheng Wanming lay curled on the sofa all night, crippled by stomach pain, yet Huo Tingchuan just sat nearby, glued to his mobile games. He even snapped impatiently, "Wanming, say, these stomach issues of yours are getting old. Why don't I just hire you a professional nurse scheme?" I have to admit, Luzian handled this stuff pretty well back then. Pity the ungrateful brat just up and vanished. Those callous words were like a venomous needle piercing straight into Sheng Wanming's most sensitive nerve. She glared at the irritated, entitled creature before her, and in her mind, the tender and composed visage of Luzian, always wearing that patient, indulgent smile, suddenly materialized. Huo Tingchuan, Sheng Wanming choked out through the agonizing spasms in her gut, her voice freezing over. What was the real reason you abandoned me for life abroad? What? Huo Tingchuan's fingers busy mashing buttons, clamped shut, his eyes darted with sudden panic as he dodged her stare, instantly pivoting back to his devoted act. Wanming, haven't we been over this? It was your parents. Oh. They cornered me, seized my passport, and ghosted my phone. Is that right? Sheng Wanming observed his clumsy performance, and a wave of visceral, overwhelming nausea suddenly flooded her heart. If he could fabricate the very reason for his exile, then what about the unbearable Toshkis? Inferno at the art gala 6 months ago? What about the time I tumbled down the stairs? At the auction, once a seed of suspicion is all embedded in the soul, it takes root deep and metastasizes at a terrifying pace. At dawn the next day, Sheng Wanming bypassed her entire staff and contacted the most elite private firm in City A. I need a full workup on someone. Her voice was like shards of ice. Huo Tingchuan, from the second he fled 5 years ago, leave no stone unturned. I want his entire life laid bare. Furthermore, that surveillance footage from the West Zone art exhibition fire mold. Spare no expense, restore every frame. The efficiency of, the private investigator surpassed even her highest expectations. Dead of night, 3 days later. The lights in the Sheng Group's executive suite were still burning. Sheng Wanming reclined in her leather throne, her complexion appearing ghost white under the eerie luminescence of the monitor. Across her desk lay stacks of urgent, neglected contracts, but her absolute focus was locked on a single black USB drive. With trembling fingers, she slid the drive into the port. The first file to launch was a dossier detailing Huo Tingchuan's 5 years of decadence abroad. There was zero mention of coercion, no confiscated devices, and definitely no traces of heartbreak. Huo Tingchuan, in the photos in London, Paris, and Las Vegas, was draped over various blonde models, racing hypercars and burning cash like fuel. The report revealed that the actual reason Huo Tingchuan vanished back then was because he desperately had been running an illegal slush fund behind her family's back. Realizing his fraud was about to blow up, he greedily snatched the payoff her parents offered and skipped town under the cover of night. Sheng Wanming stared at the smug, punchable face of Huo Tingchuan in the photos and let out a few hollow, chillingly bitter laughs. So this was the soulmate she had been obsessed with for 5 agonizing years. For this trash, she had wounded Luzian countless times. Next, she clicked open the file labeled Art Gala. CCTV restoration tour. The footage had been professionally enhanced, rendering the images in crystal clear detail. Sheng Wanming held her breath, eyes glued to the screen. On the monitor, the inferno had already breached the ceiling. The panicked crowd was in a state of total anarchy. She saw herself charging against the tide into the building, screaming Huo Tingchuan's name at the top of her lungs. Meanwhile, near the side exit of the gallery, Huo Tingchuan's face was hideously contorted with sheer cowardice. At the precise moment a massive flaming beam began its lethal descent, Huo Tingchuan's instinct wasn't to flee for his life, nor was it to save Luzian, who stood right beside him. Instead, he lunged forward, using such brute force that his entire facial structure warped. He gave Luzian a violent shove, launching the man who had only returned to rescue Sheng Wanming directly into the jaws of death. The beam thundered down, sending sparks exploding everywhere. Huo Tingchuan then sprinted headlong toward Sheng Wanming. A split second before their eyes met, he instantly pivoted to a weak, traumatized maskwell and conveniently collapsed into her embrace. President Sheng. Bam! Sheng Wanming slammed the desk and surged to her feet. Sheng Wanming was so consumed by a cocktail of rage and agony that her entire fragile frame was trembling with uncontrollable tremors. It turns out the gash on Luzian's forehead and his swollen, mangled ankle weren't from being accidentally jostled by the mob at all, but simply because the first love she had brought back into their lives literally tried to murder him. And what about her? What the hell was she thinking, say? She was in the hospital gaslighting Luo, Xian for faking it, and while Huo Tingchuan played up a scratch, she abandoned a bloodied and broken Lu Xian. Even at the high-stakes auction, Heishe, simply because of a single petty provocation from Huo Tingchuan, she let Lu Xian slam into the freezing wall. Wanming clutched her chest in agony, that suffocating pressure threatening to rip her soul apart. She suddenly bolted out of the office like a woman possessed. Racing back to the villa, the clock had already struck 3 a.m. Huo Tingchuan, reeking of cheap booze, was stumbling back from a bender, his arm still draped around a heavily made-up actress. Wanming Huo, why are you still awake? Huo Tingchuan recoiled in surprise, before approaching with a greasy, sleazy smirk. Perfect timing, baby. My friend just popped some top-shelf wine. Care for a slap, ma. A thunderous slap reverberated through the deathly silent foyer. This strike from Shenga, Wanming was fueled by every ounce of her furies, sending Huo Tingchuan crashing onto the floor, blood instantly oozing from the corner of his mouth. Wanming, have you lost your damn mind, Shaw? Huo Tingchuan clutched his burning cheek in utter disbelief. Sheng Wanming didn't waste a single word, hurling the stack of incriminating dossiers and the USB drive directly into Huo Tingchuan's pathetic face. The documents scattered through the air, resembling a grotesque makeshift funeral. Take your filthy trash and get the hell out of my house, mop. Sheng Wanming's voice was hollow and dangerously cold. If I catch a glimpse of you in City A, once the sun rises tomorrow, Shay, I will prove to you that occupying the CEO throne for the past 5 years had absolutely nothing to do with luck. Huo Tingchuan stared at the evidence littered across the floor, his complexion turning ghostly in a heartbeat. He knew Sheng Wanming was harboring genuine killing intent. Huo Tingchuan frantically scrambled and fled on all fours. The villa finally descended into a heavy silence. The maid timidly crept downstairs, only to discover Sheng Wanming collapsed in the center of the room, clutching the note Lu Xian had left, rejecting her money, wailing like a hollow shell that had been stripped of its soul. Lu Xian, I've thrown out the garbage. Please, can you come back? I'm begging you on my knees. You can even beat me, just please come back to me. But unfortunately, there would never again be that voice smooth as polished jade, gently whispering, drink some warm water, okay? Whenever her stomach flared. Half a decade later, the winter frost in London has finally thawed. Headlines of a university's centennial anniversary have rippled through the entire global business sector, having solidified my reputation as a legendary investment prodigy over the last 5 years. As the visionary founder and CEO of CR Capital Law, I stand in a sky-high executive suite overlooking the cathedral, tracing vertical bar, the shimmering ripples of the River Thames. Beyond the glass, the embossed gold leaf on the invitation atop my desk gleams under the sun's rays. Distinguished alumnus Mr. Lu Xian, I'm a different man now. That destitute student who lived in Sheng Wanming's shadow and wore thrifted rags is long dead. Standing here instead is a titan from the Wall Street and London financial hubs who commands respect, a man of true substance and maturity. I picked up smoking, yet I'm never its slave. I mastered the art of drinking, but I never allow myself to lose control. Most significantly, I have Tang Ning by my side. Throughout these grueling 5 years, Tang Ning weathered the initial battles and hardships of CR Capital with me when I drank until I suffered gastric bleeding just to lock in crucial funding and ended up confined to a London hospital bed. She dropped her entire world to remain anchored by my side. She clutched my hand and wept until her eyes were as red as a rabbit's. Lu Xian, if you keep gambling with your life like this, I'm calling off the wedding. That day, despite my ghostly pallor, I pulled her close and kissed her in that London ward. I intend to live for a very long time, I promised her, because I finally realized that someone actually exists in this world who can transform a life that was once poisonously bitter into something sweet as honey. Lu Xian, it's time to head back home. Tang Ning wrapped her arms around my waist, gently resting, her cheek against the fabric of my suit jacket. The university anniversary gala, I want to attend it by your side. I want everyone to witness exactly how extraordinary my man has become. I interlaced my fingers with hers, admiring the ring. The elegant, pristine diamond ring on her finger glistened, and I gave a soft, firm nod. It's time to return home. The Centennial Gala took place at the Hilton Hall, the most prestigious venue in all of City A. The moment Tang Ning and I appeared arm in arm at the red carpet's edge, the camera flashes in the foyer practically detonated. Tang Ning was a reigning A-list goddess, a natural magnet for every lens, while I, the once destitute nobody who vanished from City A 5 years ago, now returned as the titan of a global investment powerhouse, leaving the crowd in absolute shock. Check it out over there. Well, that's Tang Ning, but who's the guy with her living under a rock, that's Lu Ziyan of CR Capital. The biggest domestic unicorn startups of the last 2 years were all handpicked and bankrolled by him. He's officially among the wealthiest alumni in a university history. Wait, doesn't he look exactly like that guy who used to shadow Sheng Wanming, you know? Her pathetic little simp Ma. I maintained a calm smile as I escorted Tang Ning inside. Suddenly, I felt a piercing heavy gaze, a volatile cocktail of torment and fixation burning into my spine. Without even glancing back, I knew precisely who it was. Sheng Wanming was seated at the VIP table as one of the most primary patrons of the Alumni Association. The past 5 years had clearly been unkind to her. The Sheng Group had taken a massive hit following the humiliating Huo Tingchuan scandal, though she used cutthroat maneuvers just to stay solvent. Chronic depression and lack of sleep had left her looking hauntingly frail. Tonight she wore a striking crimson gown, a desperate attempt to mask her ghostly pallor. But as her eyes locked onto mine, the champagne flute in her grip shuddered violently, spilling liquid gold onto the luxury carpet. She stared at me, her expression a chaotic blur of shock, elation-crushing guilt, and deep insecurity. Ultimately, it all solidified into a forced vertical bar. Brittle coldness. It was her signature defense. Whenever she felt cornered or small, she used arrogance as her armor. A few former classmates crowded around me, offering awkward greetings to the new Lu Ziyan. CEO Lu, it's been ages, mantle. I always knew you were cut from a different cloth. And I was dead on. Sheng Wanming elegantly set down her glass, under the collective gaze of the room, stalking toward me in her high heels with measured steps. She came to a halt exactly 2 paces away. In that precise heartbeat, I was hit by the familiar notes of her perfume. It was the specific fragrance I had meticulously handpicked for her 5 years ago. I once considered that scent the height of purity, but now it merely reeked of rot, a sickening remnant of a dead past. Tang Ning gracefully anchored my arm, her smile soft and radiant. Sheng Wanming scanned me, taking in my perfectly bespoke suit and the absolute chilling indifference in my gaze. She inhaled sharply, as if desperately reinforcing her mental barricades, then used a tone so detached it felt miles away, to demand, "May I ask who you are, Ball? Have we actually met before, boss?" The moment she spoke, our former classmates were stunned into silence. Everyone traded bewildered looks. I thought to myself, Sheng Wanming, say, what is this pathetic charade even for? Back then, how Lu Ziyan worshipped you. The entire city was witness to it. I smiled. This smile didn't contain a drop of bitterness. It wasn't some shield of self-deprecation. It was a manifestation of total, unshakable serenity. I retrieved a gold-embossed business card from my inner pocket, with a flawlessly professional and courteous demeanor stripped of wall. Even a flicker of personal sentiment, presenting it to her with both hands. It's a pleasure, CEO Sheng. My voice remained steady and resonant. I am Lu Ziyan of CR Capital. I was formerly a beneficiary of the Sheng family's tuition aid moi, though I never had the opportunity to thank you face to face. Seeing you today, I see CEO Sheng is as formidable as ever. Sheng Wanming stared at the proffered card, as if she were staring at a one-way ticket to damnation. Lu Ziyan, her trembling voice, quavered, her icy facade shattering in a heartbeat. CEO Sheng, the shadows of the past, much like the title printed on this business card, are firmly in the rearview mirror now. I turned and cast a tender, devoted gaze toward Tang Ning. Allow me to introduce the two of you. This is my fiancée Tang Ning. Tang Ning offered a perfectly poised nod. A pleasure to meet you, CEO Sheng. Ziyan speaks of the Sheng Group quite frequently. I look forward to our future professional collaborations. Tang Ning's mention of frequent conversations pierced through Sheng Wanming's composure, like a serrated blade, driving deep into her most vulnerable scar. Sheng Wanming's lips parted, but it felt as if her throat were constricted by jagged shards of glass. Not a single syllable could escape. She stared at our undeniable chemistry and watched as I instinctively shielded Tang Ning from the press, a sanctuary that once belonged solely to her, but now the man who was once ready to kneel and wash her tired feet, who would endure brutal violence in her place and soothe her pain through the dead of night, and was channeling that exact same devotion to protect a different woman. And she no longer possessed even the right to demand an explanation midway through the gala. I stepped away to the restroom. As I turned the corner of the secluded balcony corridor, Sheng Wanming intercepted me. The mask had finally shattered. She looked as hysterical as a madwoman. She lunged, seizing my sleeve with a death grip, her nails biting into my forearm. Lu Ziyan, how can you stand there and act like a stranger? You're actually calling me CEO Sheng. You used to call me Wanming Lu Ziyan. How could you? I know I messed up. I truly deeply realized my mistake. That piece of trash, Huo Tingchuan, has been discarded like garbage. I uncovered the absolute truth about that night. He was the monster who pushed you, The blame is entirely mine. She began to sob uncontrollably, her tears ruining her expensive makeup. Can you please come back? I'm begging you. I'll hand over half of the Sheng group moss. No, I'll give you the entire empire. Just go back to being the man you were. Yeah. Hate me if you must, I don't care. Just don't look at me like a stranger. I'm begging for your mercy. Wait. Stared at her in silence at the high and mighty heiress who was once so arrogant and unreachable. Sheng Wanming, I uttered slowly, my voice drifting through the night like a soft ocean wall, yet crushing weight. In reality, I granted you forgiveness a long time ago. Sheng Wanming's eyes instantly flared with hope as if she had glimpsed a dying ember at the absolute end of her rope. However, I coldly brushed her hand aside. Without much effort, but with total finality, forgiveness is not an invitation to start over. In my world, from the second I stepped out of that villa, 5 years ago, you were already buried in my past. The version of you standing here is merely the CEO of the Sheng Group, nothing more than a potential client in my portfolio. That is all. I'm begging you don't do this. Sheng Wanming shook her head in sheer despair. Luzian Som, you obviously worship the ground I walked on. You were ready to throw your life away for me. How can you claim it's all just evaporated? Because I am no longer in love with you. Sheng Wanming. I stared directly into her soul, my tone completely purged of any lingering resentment, echoing with the terrifying stillness of stagnant water. When you truly love someone, it is a blessing from above. But when you finally stop, it is a liberation, and the version of me standing before you is finally free. I turned my back and walked away. Behind me, the heavy thud of a body hitting the floor echoed. Sheng Wanming collapsed like a broken doll upon the freezing marble tiles. In the dead silence before the torrential rain descended, she unleashed a mournful, soul-shattering scream. After that final confrontation on the hotel balcony that night, the last spark of life seemed to drain out of Sheng Wanming, leaving behind nothing but a hollow walking corpse. She abandoned her post at the company, offloading every aspect of the Sheng Group's operations to a professional management team. Her only daily routine now was to haunt my existence like a specter, maneuvering in vertical bar, inconspicuous black sedan, shadowing me from the shadows. When I arrived at the CR building, at the capital for an executive meeting, she would park her car on the opposite curb, watching from dawn until the dead of night. When I accompanied Tang Ning to the mall to select wedding gifts, she donned a mask and shades lurking behind a counter 10 meters away, watching with a mix of hunger and agony as our fingers remained tightly interlaced. She never dared to bridge the distance, haunted by my warning to never again pollute my vision. Until one afternoon, my assistant collected an opulent package from the front desk with no return address. Peeling back the thick layers of midnight velvet, nestled there was a gemstone radiating a haunting blue glow. It was the prize from that auction 5 years ago, the very night that shattered my heart into pieces. Hua Tingchuan had used another's tribute to buy her favor, that legendary deep-sea blue sapphire, representing an eternal undying love. Back then, Sheng Wanming was desperate to win Hua Tingchuan's smile, spending a fortune without a second thought. And now, beside the jewel lay a sticky note, the ink blurred by dried teardrops. Lu Ziyan, this never truly belonged to him. You are the only one worthy of owning it. Please just take it, I beg you. If you accept this one thing, Claude, I swear I will never cross your path ever again. I stared down at that extravagant gem, yet not a single spark of feeling flickered in my soul. Return it to its sender. I snapped the lid shut and shoved it toward my assistant. My voice as flat as if I were discarding a piece of junk mail informed the reception that moving forward, anything from Sheng Wanming is to be tossed directly into the dumpster outside. Don't bring it to my floor and don't report it. 48 hours later, City A was slammed by a catastrophic deluge. As my assistant headed to the garage for the car, he caught a glimpse. Beside the massive trash bins outside the CR Capital Tower, where the once formidable empress of the Sheng Group, was on her knees, her dignity obliterated in the heart of a mountain of sludge, grime, and rotting waste. She was clawing through the filth with her bare hands. She scavenged for 3 grueling hours, her fingers shredded and bleeding from jagged glass and rusted metal. When she finally reached her breaking point, unearthed from the stench of the putrid kitchen waste, that velvet-encased box, she clutched it to her heart as if it were a holy relic, then collapsed in the center of the rain-slicked pavement, wailing until she lost consciousness. When the news broke, I was standing in the apartment kitchen, helping Tang Ning fasten the ties of her apron. Tang Ning's filming commitments in London had officially concluded. Tonight she had declined every gala invitation to prepare a home-cooked meal for me. Lu Ziyan, Jasia. Be a dear and slice the tomatoes. She wore her hair in a messy bun with a smudge of flour dusted on the tip of her nose, resembling a radiant, carefree spirit. On it, I chuckled, gripping the knife and reaching out to brush the flour from her face. At that exact moment, my phone resting on the marble counter suddenly, shuddered. It was an image message from an unregistered contact. I instinctively tapped it to see the content. In a heartbeat, the photo flashed onto the screen, carrying a metaphorical, pungent metallic scent of blood that pierced right through my vision. It depicted a designer bathtub overflowing with warm water, but the liquid had been stained a horrifying crimson, saturated thick and vibrantly dark. A slender arm so ghostly pale it looked translucent, draped lifelessly over the porcelain edge on the wrist, was a jagged, brutal laceration, the flesh carved open with fresh blood cascading down along those once regal fingers, plunking drop by drop, descending into the pool, dissolving into a dark silhouette of impending death. Immediately following, a text followed, Lu Zian, the water is freezing. The doctors once warned me about my poor blood clotting kaye, so I'll drain away very soon. I've scrubbed the sapphire clean and hidden it beneath the pillow. I also penned down every single apology that I've owed you since the beginning. I'm begging you see me one final time, please. If you are willing to show up, Beals. If you send even a one-word reply this instant, I'll dial for an ambulance. If you don't, I'm surrendering this life back to you. I'll consider it a final payment for the life you saved. Long ago, through the glowing screen, I could practically visualize Sheng Wanming submerged in that crimson pool, like a desperate drowning soul, eyes glued to her phone with manic intensity, gambling her very life as the ultimate chess piece, waiting for my resolve to shatter, Tang Ning plate in hand, spun around vertical bar, and her gaze accidentally grazed my phone screen. She turned deathly pale from the sheer shock. The porcelain nearly slipped from her grip. God Lu Zian Chol. Is that? It's nothing. Just more spam. Notifications. I impassively clicked the lock button, flipped the phone face down on the granite, then reached for a paper towel to methodically dry the moisture from my hands. But that was a terrifying amount of blood. Should we really not alert the authorities? Woki. Tang Ning gripped my sleeve, her worry palpable. I turned and pulled her into a protective embrace, resting my chin atop her head. My voice was steady, yet it vibrated with a cold, ruthless clarity. Pay her no mind. It's merely a theatrical performance, a desperate attempt to manipulate me via trauma. But I have officially left the theater. Years ago when her legs were paralyzed, and she spiraled swinging a heavy wooden chair. Like a lunatic to batter her own limbs, I didn't pause for even a heartbeat, to lung in and use my own body as a shield to absorb that crushing impact. But for her sake, I was in such agony that cold sweat drenched me. The world went black, yet I still clung to her legs, vowing to her that because her mobility was so precious, I would never let her destroy herself, because one day, I was determined to see her walk again. In those days, I would have bartered my very soul, just to earn a single fleeting smile from her. But now staring at her gore-stained, trembling wrist, my pulse remained as flat as a Dead Sea. I actually found the entire display quite pathetic. Did she truly believe death could absolve the humiliations she had forced me to endure? Did she think her demise would shackle me with eternal guilt? Too little too late, after dinner to decisively silence the toxic rumors swirling online these past few days, sparked by those grainy paparazzi shots of Tang Ayuk. Ning I coordinated with CR Capital's PR squad, and finalized a strategy with Tang Ning's talent agency, precisely at 8 p.m. that evening. Tang Ning's official Weibo and my personal private verified handle simultaneously dropped a bombshell update. No lengthy explanations were required, just a solitary image in the frame. Our hands were firmly gripped, fingers intimately interlaced. On our ring fingers sat bespoke diamond bands. Understated yet radiating pure luxury, the backdrop was the cozy warm glow of our shared sanctuary. The caption consisted of one definitive sentence. The biting winter has finally thawed, and the starlight shines for eternity. My woman Tang Ning. The second this post hit the feed, the entire internet crashed. An A-list, screen goddess, and an investment titan, worth billions going public. A tidal wave of congratulations instantly overwhelmed the comments. However, I remained blissfully unaware that on the opposite side of the city mine, within that hillside villa as desolate as a tomb, Sheng Wanming was drowning in a pool of freezing blood. Her consciousness had already begun to flicker. The water had surged past her chest, turning a morbid near-black shade of crimson. She stared at the phone perched precariously on the vanity. The screen stayed pitch black. No call ever arrived. The man who once worshipped her like a deity didn't kick down the door to rescue her from that carnage, a bone-chilling cold to cold, summoning her final ounce of vitality. With gore-stained fingers shaking violently, she tapped the phone screen to wake it up and launched the Weibo app. She desperately hoped to find that I was simply away from my device or occupied with a crisis. And then, occupying the top spot on the trending charts, the flaming red viral tag scorched her eyes. Tang Ning and Lu Jian. Official relationship announcement. Sheng Wanming gazed at the locked hands in the image, reading the declaration, my woman, the device, slipped from her weakened, Isa, enervated fingers, plummeting with a splash into the gore. The display flickered twice, before fading into a total permanent darkness. So it turns out, you truly don't need me anymore. Shengwan Ming flashed a pathetic broken smile as a solitary bitter tear escaped the corner of her eye. That head, held high with haughty pride for a lifetime, finally sagged under the weight of absolute regret, insane jealousy and bone-deep hollow despair. She completely abandoned the idea of pressing the emergency alarm, the one button within reach that could save her slowly, surrendering her vision to the shadows, and letting the infinite darkness and icy water completely swallow her whole. 3 days later, a news bulletin detonated, like a deep-sea depth charge. Once again sending shockwaves across the web, the female, chairwoman of the mighty Sheng Group, Sheng Wanming, had committed suicide by slitting her wrists. According to the report, Shenga, Wanming tragically ended her life in the bathtub 8, her secluded villa. When the housekeeper finally discovered her, the water had already begun to reek of decay. Her corpse was ghostly pale, bloated, and long since rigid. But that wasn't even the most jarring detail. For the online community, the part that truly sent chills down everyone's spine was when police cleared the scene and forced entry into a locked room on the 3rd floor. And the cold, disturbing relics found inside were covertly photographed by investigators and leaked to the tabloid media. That massive 100-square-meter room was entirely papered with photos of a single man. Every single image featured me. There were shots of my back while I wore an apron, patiently simmering soup in her kitchen, my side profile as I meticulously pushed her wheelchair during those grueling rehab sessions, my silhouette hunched over a book under a dim lamp. There was even a candid of my forehead injury, snapped secretly while I was being patched up at the hospital. Aside from the creepy shrine of photos, the room resembled a bizarre landfill packed with ancient daily junk, a worn-out discarded toothbrush, a chipped ceramic mug, a rehab journal that had been ripped to shreds and then painstakingly taped back together piece by piece, along with a dusty old protective charm that had long since lost its color. Right in the dead center of the room, atop the priceless red sandalwood desk, rested a colossal iron chest brimming with over 3,000 unsent letters. The media exposed the contents of the topmost pages. Every single entry began with Lu Xian Ya, my one true love. The conclusion of every note was penned in a shockingly subservient tone. Forgive me, please return to my side. Instantly, the internet erupted in a frenzy. Countless clueless netizens were captivated by this billionaire ice queen CEO and her seemingly profound, yet tragic, unrequited obsession. In the court of public opinion, death wipes the slate clean. People naturally side with the broken and the dead. Inevitably, a wave of keyboard warriors began swarming Mayenda, Tang Ning's social media with toxic guilt trips. She ended it all because of you. Her entire world revolved around you, Lu Xian. Will your conscience let you sleep at night? A woman gave you her soul sight. How could you be cold enough to discard her was? He's a snake upgrading to a new girl and baiting his ex to end it. Those, suffocating insults didn't disrupt my peace of mind in the least. I didn't even waste energy on legal threats, because I already knew. The truth wasn't hidden in those performative tears or that hoard of worthless junk. A week later, I received an invite to a high school reunion. Initially, I intended to decline, until I learned our former homeroom instructor had been diagnosed with aggressive terminal stomach cancer. This was almost certainly the final opportunity for everyone to congregate and pay well respects, thus accompanied by Tang Ning and a security detail. I quietly arrived. Inside the private suite, the vibe was thick with tension and unease. Everyone had been doom-scrolling the headlines. Ew. The gazes they threw my way were a cocktail of awe, voyeurism, and a subtle undercurrent of judgment. Once the wine had loosened their tongues, the girl who was once Shunga, Wanming's shadow, the same one who relished in mocking me, the loudest girl in our old clique, finally reached her breaking point. Fueled by liquid courage and with reddened eyes, she bolted upright and stared me down. Lu Xian, I'm well aware that you're in a different league now, and that I have no business crossing you, me. But there is one thing I have to know. The girl's voice cracked thick with emotion. Wanming may have been prideful and difficult in the past, but her devotion to you was undeniably real. Did you even look at those mementos exposed in the headlines? Twat. She was head over heels for you. She literally died for you. Back then, why? In the world. Could you walk away so ruthlessly? The entire private sweat instantly fell as silent as a tomb. Everyone froze with their chopsticks midair. Their collective gaze locked onto me, judging me like a villain guilty of a heinous betrayal. Seated at the head of the table, I set down my white porcelain teacup and turned to give a reassuring pat to the tense hand of Tang Ning, signaling her to remain at ease. Then I tilted my head up, scanning the faces of every former classmate present. A ghost of a smile gradually played on my lips, drenched in a chilling, scathing irony. Devotion, you say? I locked eyes with that girl, my voice as detached as if I were narrating a stranger's tragedy that didn't affect me at all. It's fascinating how a few letters and a pile of garbage can fuel such pathetic delusions in people. Since your curiosity is getting the better of you, Kyle, let me set the record straight for everyone. Back in our school days, I was convinced Sheng Wanming utterly loathed my existence. Whenever rumors of me dating leaked, she purposely cornered my girlfriend to brand me a dog, systematically sabotaging my relationships. Later, when she was with the campus golden boy Manhwa, Huo Tingchuan the first retaliated by whispering that her private affairs were a total disaster. We were natural-born enemies until that very moment. Fateful accident occurred. I trailed off for a beat, noticing how their attention became razor-sharp. Sheng Wanming's world collapsed. The surgeons solemnly announced that she might remain wheelchair-bound for the rest of her life. In that dark hour, Huo Tingchuan, the very man she swore was her soulmate, refused to even set foot in her hospital ward. He ghosted her with a cold breakup text and then fled the country, vanishing like a coward. The pampered heiress of the Sheng clan, once the star of the show, plummeted to rock bottom in a heartbeat. She morphed into a bitter, volatile shadow of herself, using the threat of suicide as a daily weapon. Sheng's parents were drowning in their own tears day and night, utterly powerless. There was a specific moment when her mental state completely fractured. She seized a heavy wooden chair and maniacally hammered it into her own paralyzed, sensationless legs. I was the one who lunged forward without a second thought, to shield her, absorbing the bone-crushing force of that impact. The girl who had interrogated me froze, a flicker of genuine shock dancing in her eyes. My tone remained chillingly indifferent. In her manic state, she was screaming through bloodshot eyes, "My legs are trash anyway. Who cares if they're pulverized? Are you looking for a grave? Can't you see how close you came to dying, Shou?" The agony was so intense I was drenched in cold sweat, feeling my bones on the verge of splintering vertical bar into dust, but I gripped her legs with iron resolve and told her, "I see exactly what's happening, Yaot. Because your mobility is everything, Kiatl. That's why I won't let you destroy yourself. Because one day, I'm going to make sure you walk again, In that heartbeat, the arrogant Sheng Wanming finally shuddered in my embrace, sobbing and pleading, "Luzian, please never abandon me." After hearing that, several women in the suite couldn't suppress their welling tears. The girl who started this choked out, "If you two survived such a traumatic bond, and she leaned on you so desperately, how did it all fall apart so spectacularly? Was it all just a huge misunderstanding?" "Misunderstanding," I scoffed, and rose from my seat, bracing my hands on the table to loom over the group. There was no lack of communication. The problem was, she actually succeeded in standing back up. And on the triumphant day, she regained her stride, your elite social circle, through an exclusive club, bashed just to celebrate her recovery. I arrived clutching a gift I'd spent months painstakingly selecting, only to push the double doors wide when I overheard you all inside prying into her plans to eventually marry me. And do you remember Sheng Wanming's response? She scoffed. "I only view him as a pathetic older brother." The women who were there that night instantly turned ghost white, hanging their heads in shameful silence. But that's not the half of it. I stood, tall, my gaze as lethal as a blade as I scanned the room. The second Huo Tingchuan, Huey, the coward who dumped her, crawled back into her life, and she didn't think twice before grabbing his hand. When a sudden fire erupted, Huo Tingchuan, to save his own skin, shoved me into a collapsing incinerated beam, and Sheng Wanming didn't just ignore my screams. She clutched Huo Tingchuan's hand and bolted outside without a single glance back. At the auction, Huo Tingchuan staged a fall down the stairs just to frame me. She lunged toward me in front of the elite crowd and viciously slammed me against the wall, barking at me to get out of her sight. With every cold truth I uttered, the atmosphere in the room turned sub-zero. No one dared to even draw a breath, completely paralyzed by the revelation. What you witnessed in the headlines regarding those devoted love letters was merely the tantrum of a woman used to a loyal dog, Saul, who suddenly realized one day that the dog had not only stopped begging me, but was thriving without her, triggering her extreme humiliation and a warped sense of defeat. I stared icily at the girl who had interrogated me. That wasn't affection, it was a pathologically selfish urge for total possession. It was the bitterness of realizing she was blind to Huo Tingchuan's true nature. It was nothing more than her own pathetic self-pity. She didn't end her life because of my absence. She was hounded to death by her own toxic stupidity and the agonizing terror of losing her grip on me. That is the ugly reality. Every syllable reverberated like a thunderclap in the silent room. The only sound left was a few ragged gasps The girl who had only recently challenged me felt her strength vanish and slumped into her seat. She covered her mouth, rendered utterly speechless. The deception was laid bare. The devoted CEO, idolized by the entire internet, had her final facade viciously torn away by my hand. My narrative ends here. I retrieved my black suit jacket from the seat, gently draped it over Tang Ning's shoulders, and pulled her close by the waist. My wife's stomach is quite sensitive. She can't afford to catch a chill, ikso, nor should she go hungry. We've paid our respects to our teacher, so we'll be taking our leave now. Please enjoy the rest of your meal. With that, I didn't offer anyone another opportunity to interject. I took Tang Ning's hand and swung the door open to exit. As we stepped out, the rain had finally ceased. The desolate late autumn night sky was breathtakingly clear. The stars shimmered, and the neon poles of the city stretched out before us, carving out a radiant boulevard. Luzian. Tang Ning looked up at me, her bright eyes overflowing with empathy and love. She squeezed my hand with firm resolve. Just now, when you revisited the past mall, did it hurt? I came to a halt, pivoted, and gazed at the woman who pulled me from the abyss. Right there, I leaned down and pressed a soft, reverent kiss against her forehead. I smiled and shook my head. Not in the slightest. A few decaying branches and withered leaves in the muck should have been purged with that pool of blood and flushed into oblivion long ago. I looked up, took her hand and walked toward the dazzling lights ahead. This time, I had finally reached the vast, clear blue sky that truly belongs to me.